So I promised you the entire testimony that went on day 21, day 22, and day 23 of the Karen Reed trial. And you're going to get all of that today in a nutshell. Probably less than an hour, but you're not going to want to miss a second of it. I'm going to show you the blue test, the blue, what are they calling it? The blue paint test in its entirety. And I'm going to show you how the prosecution ended their case in chief. Yes, they have rested and the defense is starting their case in chief today. So you don't want to miss this episode right after this introduction. I gotta have my coffee because this is going to be quite involved. This as was the testimony. I crochet, so I don't kill people. All right. Judson Welcher was on the stand on day 21, 22, and 23 of the Karen Reed case. Karen Reed is being tried for second-degree murder of her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. At the time, he was a Boston police officer. They had been out partying. They had gone out drinking at one establishment, had gone to a second establishment, the Waterfall, left there about just 10 minutes after midnight, maybe 12 minutes after midnight, with the intent of going to a house party of one of the other people that they were out drinking with, the Alberts. And the Alberts were also, Brian Albert was also a police officer. So they get to that residence. It is her testimony, well, not testimony, her theory of the case. I don't know if she will testify, but it's her theory of the case that she dropped him off with the intention of him going to the house party and she leaving. He went into the house. That's what she thought. She thought he went into the house, and she never saw him again until later that morning, several hours later, when she found him on the front lawn of that home, deceased. So the prosecution's theory of the case is that she actually backed up the vehicle that she was in, having been intoxicated, and she hit him. He landed on the lawn, suffering a severe head injury, and died as a combination of the head injury and hypothermia. So then we get Judson Welcher, the star prosecution witness, who is an accident reconstructionist and biomedical engineer. A guy with a whole lot of education. Yes. What does my shirt say? I like you very much. Yes. Okay. So his testimony gets off to a weird start. Outside the presence of the jury, this is on day 21, the defense asked to do a voir dire. What that means is they want to ask this guy some questions because he had changed his report. And because he had changed his report, the defense had questions. They didn't have an opportunity to, because he changed it like during the trial. They didn't have an opportunity to ask him questions about the changes that he made to his report. Now, Judson Welcher works with Mr. Burgess for a company called Aperture. Now, if you remember, Mr. Burgess was the guy that had an associate's degree that was in charge of extracting this information off the informatics of the Lexus and compiling his report so that this expert, also from Aperture, could put it together and do an accident reconstruction. So what he was asking him about his change in his report was, what was the change? So apparently if you follow their report from the first trial, their initial reports, they timed the triggering event. There were two triggering events on that from that infotainment center. One triggering event was at there's three triggering events. One was the starting up of the engine. The second one was a 3-point turn, and the third one was the backing up. So based on the times that were put together initially by Mr. Burgess, their theory was that there was a window of time when this triggering event could have occurred. And they're saying it could have occurred in their initial reports. They were saying it could have occurred before the last known human event on John's cell phone, which was him turning it off or unlocking it with his face. It's basically what he did. But what they did to change that, because that helps the defense. Wait a minute, you're saying he was hit, but he's got this massive head injury and he's turning his phone on. So that helps them. So they had to figure out, well, what are you going to do this? So what they did was they took the phone and the Lexus times, and they decided they're going to match them up. So they matched them up at the point of the 3-point turn, the times. And then they went from there. Now, with those times matched up, it was a 29-second difference, which would put the triggering event after the last human interaction with the phone. That meaning, he did this last thing with his phone and then he got hit by the car. So very, very controversial. So let's move into the actual testimony. So he gets that out on voir dire. You changed your report, and here's why. You needed to make it align with something that was helpful to the prosecution. Okay, so they started out by going through his background and education. He's got a PhD. He says it's really funny. His father wanted him to go to medical school, or no, he wanted to go to medical school because his dad was a doctor, and his dad was like, no, it's not worth it. Don't go to medical school. So he goes to engineering school instead, and then becomes this biomedical engineer, and it ends up in accident reconstruction. So he has his PhD as well. So he goes over everything he reviewed in this case, and it's voluminous, very voluminous. And then he talks about how, you have an office in California, don't you? And he's like, yes, I do. And you came all the way out from California to examine this vehicle, both the vehicles actually, at the crime scene. And he says, yes, I did. And how important is it to examine the actual vehicles? Because I have a feeling the defense probably didn't do that. They probably didn't fly from wherever they're located to come review the actual vehicles. I don't know that was entirely necessary, but he came all the way from California. He examined the Lexus, which was Karen Reed's vehicle. He examined the vehicle of John O'Keefe, and he went to the property. Now, he says, I didn't go on the property. I wanted to trespass. I stayed in the road, but I saw the property. He said, no, I didn't walk 7 feet in to see where he was, but I stood there. I saw it. Okay. So then there was testimony regarding how long it would have taken Karen Reed to get from the home on Fairview, where John's body was found, to John's home, where she went to afterwards, because we know her cell phone connected at a certain time. Now, according to the new calculations, their theory is that John O'Keefe was hit by this vehicle at 12:32. She connects to the Wi-Fi at John's house at 12:36. And if you Google how long does it take to get from one place to the other, it says 6 to 7 minutes. But this guy went through and he mapped out 3 different routes. He says, we got 3 different routes. The shortest route it would have taken was 2.3 miles, and it would have taken approximately 4 minutes and 15 seconds to get. Well, that's the distance between 12:32 and 12:36. But it would have taken, if they go the 2.3 miles, she would have had to have been traveling 32.7 miles per hour. And then the longest route was 2.8 miles, and she would have been traveling at 39.5 miles per hour. So it is possible that She could have hit John O'Keefe at 12:32 and made it to the house at 12:36. But his routes don't account for traffic lights. They were just as the crow flies routes. Being intoxicated, not knowing where you're going, the weather. It doesn't take any of that into account. And Google does, which is why they have it at 6 to 7 minutes instead of 4 minutes and 15 seconds. So then we talk about this last trigger event, the backing up of the vehicle. He said that the vehicle recorded going forward 34 feet and then back 53 feet for a total of 87 feet. And I'm calculating that in my head, and that's like 30 yards. If you look at a football field, 30 yards, Anyway, his next bit of testimony was about Karen Reed's assertion that her taillight broke when she backed up at John O'Keefe's house and she hit his vehicle on the right rear taillight.
So Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, I don't know if you noticed, but there actually is contact between the vehicles.
So he examined John O'Keefe's vehicle, and then he took that ring camera footage and he did what he calls grammetry, I don't know, something. But what that is it's these 3D laser images that he looks at different things that are located in the ring video, and he does all these measurements, and it's all very scientific. And his final opinion after doing all that and testifying to all that was that there was no possibility that Miss Reed's vehicle hit the right rear light of John O'Keefe's vehicle. He said it did impact John O'Keefe's vehicle, but it was much lower on her car. It wasn't where the taillight would be. That taillight is pretty high up on that Lexus. And he's saying it was hit lower down. Then he was asked a lot about this Trooper Paul. Now, if you didn't watch the first trial, and I didn't, so I had to figure out who is Trooper Paul. Well, in the first trial, there was a witness, instead of this accident reconstruction expert PhD guy, which they did not have in the first trial, they had Trooper Paul, who came in and testified about reconstructing this accident, who totally fell apart on cross-examination and finally admitted that this last triggering event, the backing up the vehicle, actually occurred after the vehicle was impounded. It didn't even occur that night. So, of course, they don't want to use the trooper. He's not going to testify. They hired this PhD guy. And so they really wanted to get in what happened, what this trooper said. And he goes, I haven't looked at his report. I didn't rely on his report. Nothing. And to the point where they actually argued this outside the presence of the jury in front of the judge, saying, the defense saying we should be allowed to question him about Trooper Paul. And the final ruling was no, they could not, because Trooper Paul is not testifying in this trial. And they can't use his report because that's hearsay. You can ask this expert about other witnesses in the trial. For example, Scorty Bello, the medical examiner. But you can't ask him about Trooper Paul because Trooper Paul didn't testify in this trial. Anyway. So then he was talking about, on cross-examination, he was asked, did you realize, because he made some testimony about how, he had this cocktail glass in his hand and there was glass found on the bumper. And that was more evidence that, he was hit by this vehicle. And he did not realize that the glass on the bumper was never matched to the cocktail glass. Glass on the bumper. We don't know where that came from. He didn't realize that. Then, and I'm kind of bouncing around here. So the other thing that was brought out on cross-examination is that this expert works for Aperture, so is Mr. Burgess. Aperture was paid they signed a contract to get $325,000 for this. $325,000. This man, they actually went out and bought a Lexus so they could recreate this next test I'm going to show you, which is incredibly not scientific in any way, shape, or form. With the understanding that once this was all finished and done with, they would sell the Lexus and just bill the prosecution for the difference. I don't even know if that's part of the $325,000 that they're going to pay Aperture for these two experts to testify and do all the stuff that they did. But he goes through, and I'm going to show you the video of this blue paint test. And it's probably about 10 minutes long, but stick with it because it's very interesting. It was the best testimony that this man had. Like, this is something that the jury could understand. You can understand it. The rest of this guy's testimony was incredibly boring. So I want you to hear this part, and then we'll talk about it on the flip side.
Me. I'm actually 6 feet, half an inch tall. What you see in the upper right is the coroner's examination report for Mr. O'Keefe. He's 73 inches tall. That's 6 feet, 1 inch tall. At this time, I was 220 pounds. Mr. O'Keefe, at the time of this incident, was 216 pounds. So I took measurements of myself. I'm actually wearing the same make and size shoes as Mr. O'Keefe, the same brand of jeans as Mr. O'Keefe, the same brand and size shirt of Mr. O'Keefe. You see the Lexus in the background. We have matched the height to the Lexus. What I'm showing here is both my height, and then keep in mind where the height of this wing is relative to my right eye. So now I'm wearing, in addition to the same shirt and shoes, same type of sweatshirt, and actually the same kind of baseball hat. We tried to determine the exact glass from the Waterfall grill. Found out they were getting different ones at different times, but I ordered my glass from the same distributor that Waterfall Grill ordered their glasses from. So you can see in my right hand here, I have a glass. Here's a glass. It looks similar. It's from the same location. And then in the lower right photograph, what I've done is I've rolled up my sleeve, taken the sweatshirt off, and I'm going to look at how this contact pattern lines up. So the first set of slides, I'm simply standing next to the Lexus. We know we have a broken taillight. We know how scratches on Mr. O'Keefe's arm. I'm seeing how those may or may not relate to the height and position of the taillight.
Dr. Welcher, if you could back up one slide, I have a question for you. In the middle photograph, at the top of the Lexus, there's like a rim. What do you call that?
I call it a wind wing. I mean, it could be a wing.
Okay, thank you.
Air dam would be another. Okay, so I then set about to do a little bit of testing with the Lexus. The first test you're going to see is me just walking backwards or actually sideways into the Lexus. What I've done is I've painted the Lexus right rear tail light with what's called grease paint, kind of sort of like paint, but it doesn't dry. And then I have backed up sideways, side shuffled into the Lexus with my arm out to see what the damage pattern looks like, or basically where someone of Mr. O'Keefe's height's arm would contact the rear tail light. So then what you see is I've shown the photographs again. I show the paint transfer onto my arm. The yellow grease paint on my hand was to show where my hand would hit the tail light. And so just kind of me walking slowly sideways into it, the approximate location of the tail light, and I'll line it up with the broken tail light in a second, lines up with the approximate location of the lacerations on Mr. O'Keefe's arm.
Dr. Welcher, let me ask you a question. When you're engaging these demonstrations, are you attempting to try to show exactly how Mr. O'Keefe was struck?
No. So we don't know exactly how he was struck. And pedestrian impacts are extremely sensitive to exact angles. And so where exactly your foot is, whether your foot's off the ground, can have an effect on where you end up after that. We just don't have enough information in this case to determine all that information. We know the taillight was broken. We know the glass was broken. We know we have damage to the rear of the Lexus. We know we have lacerations to Mr. O'Keefe's arm. So I'm trying to see if there's any correlation between all those.
Well, can body posture on a clip or a side swipe collision change the trajectory or the injury?
Of course.
Can the way somebody moves or reacts before impact change it?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
What are other things that can change the trajectory of the person and the injuries?
So for example, if you get hit and knocked off balance or clipped and knocked off balance, you can take additional steps. That'll affect how far your body travels. If you have one foot on the ground versus the other foot on the ground, affects how the body rotates. If your arm is at 90 degrees or 85 degrees, will affect the kinematics. We attempted to model different possibilities, and we're getting results that were all over the map. Small changes in the pedestrian position give you huge change in the output. And so from the tech stream data, we don't know exactly when in the tech stream data he was hit. So we don't even know the exact impact speed. In most pedestrian reconstructions, you typically have a point where the impact occurred, like where the person was, like in the crosswalk, for example, and they get hit and their tire leaves a rubber scrub. That's called the area of impact or point of impact. You then can look at how far they were thrown and using some laws of physics, calculate how fast the car had to be going. Well, we don't have that in this case. We don't know exactly where Mr. O'Keefe was on the roadway when this happened. Sorry, I'm about to go to the next slide. No.
Without having an exact point of impact or an exact speed or an exact body position, are you able to specifically replicate the actual collision in the way Mr. O'Keefe's body would move?
Exactly replicate? No. And again, in terms of how he would move, again, we don't know where exactly on the roadway he started. So in terms of how he moved, that's a function of where he started. We don't know if when he was clipped, he took an additional step before falling backwards. So that will change how far you are off the roadway. So the impact, which you'll see in a second, even at 2 miles an hour, will induce rotation of the body. So depending on the speed, the higher the speed, the more rotation. So if I may, so slide 111, this is simply showing where I walk sideways, how this lines up with the location of the lacerations on Mr. O'Keefe's arm. Here's the post-contact scuffing on the taillight. Here's a picture of Miss Reed's vehicle on the right-hand side. So now I said, okay, you know, that was me walking into the car. Let's have the car drive into me. I did this at very low speeds. And you'll see, and we'll throw this from 2 different angles. That's me showing I'm doing test 2. This is from a camera that we have pointing down at it. This is the speed. You'll see it's only about a 2 mile an hour impact. but even a 2-mile-an-hour impact redirects me back and causes me to rotate and take a step.
What speed is the car traveling?
You can see it. About 2 miles an hour.
Excuse me, Your Honor, that is the objection that we spoke about.
Oh,
and that I
okay.
would like to go-
All right, so that's noted, Mr. Lyson.
So similar to the other test, this is the post-contact image of the transfers onto my arm. Actually, the yellow paint, you can see from my hand is here. This is from the arm and forearm. Here's the paint transfer pattern.
And that slide number,
I'm
Dr.
sorry,
Welcher?
I'm terrible with that.
That's
Slide
okay.
116 now, that was 115.
Thank you.
Slide 116. What I've done is I've taken these yellow lines to show the extension of the components on the rear of the exemplar Lexus. Then I've done this extension of those same components on the rear of Miss Reed's Lexus and shown how the approximate location of the fractures in the taillight match up with the approximate location of the contact of the arm onto the taillight.
Dr. Welcher, do you have any indication of how Mr. O'Keefe's arm was bent, what angle it was bent at?
Not exactly, but for these to be taillight shard fragments, they would need to be in the area of the taillight, but it could be further up. We know from the police photographs that there was a damage to the rear body panel in the area I'm searching here. So it's possible his arm was a little higher up and the glass hit the rear of the Lexus and caused that damage.
In the bottom right,
Excuse me, Your Honor, objection is speculation.
I will strike that last part about the glass.
Thank you.
the purpose of the circle is for what, Dr. Welcher?
To show, in this case, primarily the location of the lacerations up on the arm, the upper part of the arm, and that they match up with the locations of at least the one remaining shard in the rear taillight of Miss Reed's Lexus.
Looking at the picture of the Lexus, bottom right middle, are there any marks on the Lexus itself that you took note of?
Yes, it's on the next slide.
Thank you.
Actually, it's 2 slides. So there, again, this is the evidence marker. There was a horizontal scuff. We know Mr. O'Keefe had blue jean type pants on. There's a scuff in the area that would approximately correspond to hip level for Mr. O'Keefe.
Next slide, please.
Yes, ma'am, 118.
Thank you.
Did you describe what you saw on the bottom right-hand corner photo as well?
I believe, yes, I did. That's the scuff that lines up with the approximate height of Mr. O'Keefe's right hip. So then I included previous image that you've seen, slide 119, with the reconstructed photograph of the rear taillight, showing where some of the fragments are. You can see where those fragments are relative to the curvature of the taillight. They'd be in the area somewhat centered within the region of the 2 yellow lines on slide 119.
Is there anything about the photograph in the top right-hand corner that's important? If so, could you zoom in and show us?
So again, it's showing that this is when it's, I believe, in the Sally Port at the police station, showing that scuff on the right rear body panel.
Did you see any similar scuffs in the middle back of the car?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Did you see anything notable as far as damage to the middle back of this Lexus?
The middle,
Yes,
like back where the doors are?
But with the middle of the back of the car, did you see any similar damage to the middle? or
There
the
were
left?
scuff marks that ran along the bumper.
Okay, continue, please.
So this is just showing his jacket he was wearing, that the puncture marks coincide to the marks on his arm.
Interesting, right? So did you notice that he actually had to extend his arm out? Like he was kind of bent over with his arm extended with that cocktail glass. Now I understand you putting the cocktail glass in your hand and you're at the level, you're holding a cocktail glass. But why are you doing this? Are you trying to create confirmation bias? Are you trying to create something that fits your narrative? I don't know. And I'm sure the jury was impressed by this or interested in this. But to me, it just still didn't make sense. Because if you look side by side with that blue paint, it matches up to that area, yes. But those scratches go all the way down his arm. Unless his arm went into that taillight and he traveled with the vehicle a little bit and then had to take his arm out of the taillight, that might explain it, but I don't know. But in that case, he would have traveled with the vehicle a little bit. That's, for some period of time, not long probably, but wouldn't he have bruises and other injuries on him? He had other injuries, but not consistent with, his elbow in being in that taillight. Anyway, I don't know if that made sense, but I hope if it doesn't, let me know in the comments and I'll try to explain it better. Okay, so what else did he testify to? So his ultimate, oh no, let me just see if I have missed anything here. Okay, hold on. Oh, so he made this comment on direct examination that the most common type of injury for a motor vehicle pedestrian accident is a head injury. But then on cross-examination, it came out that he was relying on a report that was written in 1979. It was like 40 some years old, this report. So he was asked, are you aware that there's more recent reports that say that now that everything's changed, we have better vehicles, we have better technology, better safety protocols, that the most common injury between pedestrians and motor vehicles is lower extremity injuries? And he says, no, I wasn't aware of that. He says, I'm not surprised, given all the new technology, but this guy didn't have any lower extremity injuries. So then on redirect, the prosecution brought out, well, what about if it was a side swipe? Is it common to see lower extremity injuries if he's sideswiped? He goes, no, it's not common. That was supposed to rehabilitate that testimony. I think that's it. Yeah. Okay, I just want to make sure, because this went on for 3 days. So his ultimate opinion was that the injuries that John O'Keefe suffered were consistent with being struck by a motor vehicle. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. He was struck by a motor vehicle. This is what he says. And in fact, that's exactly what happened here. And of course, there was this objection by the defense. They go sidebar. He's excused. They have this argument outside the presence of the jury that he cannot say that. That's in the province of the jury. He can say that the injuries are consistent with being struck by a motor vehicle, but he can't say that, in fact, that's what happened in this case, because that's for the jury to decide. And of course, the judge, she thought about it. She came back, she ruled, she said, he's correct. But she ruled on it for different reasons. She ruled because some of his testimony was not based on scientific method, like the blue paint test. So he really couldn't give that ultimate opinion in this case. That, in fact, that's what really happened. Yeah, so he wasn't allowed to say that. But he said it. The jury heard it. In fact, that's what happened in this case. Holy moly. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. So after this guy is done on the stand, now we're up to day 23. The prosecution puts up one final video of Karen Reed. Here it is.
So I thought, could I have run him over? Did he try to get me as I was leaving and I didn't know it? I mean, I've always got the music blasting. It's snowing. I got the wipers going, the heater blasting. Did he come and hit the back of my car and I hit him in the knee and he's drunk and passed out and asphyxiated or something? And then when I hired David Yannetti, I asked him those questions the night of January 29th. Like, David, what if, I don't know, what if I ran his foot over or what if I clipped him in the knee and he passed out or went to care for himself and he threw up or passed out, and David said, yeah, then you have some element of culpability.
So the 207.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth rests.
I'm not sure that helped their case. She's clearly speculating on what might have happened to John. Could she have played a role? And she's just saying some bizarre things. He might have vomited. Like, what? I don't know how that helped his case, but that's how he ended the prosecution's case. So what will happen now is they ended the case for the trial for the day. The defense will argue their motion for judgment of acquittal. I don't know if that's what it's called in Massachusetts, but what that is they're asking the judge to say that the plaintiff didn't prove their case enough so that the jury could find beyond a reasonable doubt that Karen Reed backed her vehicle into John O'Keefe, leaving him to die in the snow. Those motions are rarely granted. I mean, since I've had this channel, I've seen it one time where it was granted and it just left everybody's jaw on the floor. So I doubt that's going to be granted. And then the defense will start their case in chief today, Friday. Yes. So I will have that episode for you over the weekend or for Monday morning. You will not miss a thing. I will recap whatever I believe I peeked in. The defense has their accident reconstruction guy on the stand. So what do you think? Will Karen Reed take the stand? Should she take the stand? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.